like I wonder too, like why Cole catches that smoke so much. You mentioned it. That
with the pump stuff and
yeah, and an entire generation seems to kind of go at him. And do you think that he is more preachy or judgmental in his music than like a Kendrick or someone else? Like, why do you think people target Cole?
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
Reggie Williams. Happy Father's Day, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. How
Yeah.
you
I'm living the dream.
doing? Happy Father's Day to you too. Are you still not claiming your kids?
Damn. Yo, man, I'm glad you got the Windex and fixed the camera, man. You were getting a real smear campaign.
Yeah, pun intended, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking crispy clear now, man. I had no idea. I thought it was the sunlight. Yeah.
Man, your DMs, they're gonna be open and full.
How you doing, man? You talked to your dad today?
I did. I actually saw him in the week, and I meant to hide a card, somewhere in his luggage, but I forgot to. So he'll get the card Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, man, I'm glad to have him in my life.
That's cool, man. Yo, I want to dive into the music.
Yeah.
This was one of the most active music weeks we've had in a long time.
Definitely.
I want to start with Cole. So, Snow on the Bluff. Cole got a lot of flack over that song this week.
Mm-hmm.
What was your take on the song, and break down why he got the flack?
Yeah, I mean, my take on the song was it's cool. Artists have the ability to make a record now and upload it and share it with millions in a matter of hours. And we've seen real-time stream of consciousness in all music, but in hip hop a lot over the last 5 years. And I feel like elite artists such as Kendrick and J. Cole have taken advantage of that. So yeah, I mean, it was a cool record. It's where J. Cole's mind was at, and it kind of, I personally would say it's a record that kind of comes on the defensive, but it also was a bit on the offensive. So, and it came out of this, from what I understand, Noname, formerly known as Noname Gypsy, had tweeted earlier in the week, and I don't have the tweet in front of me to read it to you verbatim, but it was a criticism of your top rappers not saying or doing much in the form of activism or protests over the last over the last month, in the wake of George Floyd, really, but in the greater conversation of all that we've been talking about. So she didn't name anyone, no name, pun intended, but J. Cole took umbrage with that. And he doesn't mention her by name in the song, but the fans, the listeners, put it together that the record was in response to the tweet, and confirmed as much in a subsequent tweet after the record by J. Cole. And then Noname came with her own response, Song 33, over Madlib production. So it's been a crazy week on that front. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discourse there. So does that explain kind of the origin here?
It does. Dude, it's I got a lot of thoughts about it. So first of all, just the criticism is something that the criticism of rappers not stepping up is something that Chappelle addressed. We talked about straight up in his 846 special last week.
In response to Don Lemon and others, yeah.
Yeah, just the notion that artists, comedians, entertainers, their job right now might not be to be speaking publicly about this stuff, but actually, getting out and doing stuff. Marching, protesting, donating, all the things that they're doing. And I've seen Cole being very active, as he always is. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
So I guess one, I'm, surprised that he even took it that way, because I would think that as J. Cole, given his body of work, given, both, on the microphone and off, I wouldn't, if I was Cole, take any personal offense at, whatever words Noname said, because I would just assume that it didn't apply to me.
Right.
That's one. Secondly, putting that aside, obviously he took it the way he did. I started thinking about how the media, you know, starts to kind of pit people against one another. You know what I mean? And you know, we've done this. We did this for years. You know, and I'm sure we are as guilty of it as others. You know, sometimes just trying to find lyrics that could be directed toward another to kind of create that like that tension and like get the debate going.
Yeah.
You know, but I found that in listening to Cole's song, he wasn't really being critical of her as much as commentating on, you know, just his take on what she said, and putting out words that I think may have been applicable to her, but also more other people. So the way I took it is he's saying, look, we want people to step up and do more things. The way to do that isn't to try and shame them and to be critical of them, but to, you know, be more constructive in the dialogue. Because basically, you know, there's a bully pulpit out there now.
Yeah.
You know, social media is a bully pulpit. And, you know, the very people who have been victimized over the years are now like victimizing others. And it's an eye for an eye is not necessarily the best way of getting things done. You know, so I took Cole as being trying to be kind of constructive in that, not necessarily tearing her down. You know?
Yeah, I mean, and it was the final lyrics of the song, kind of before the outro part of it, is, you know, he questions himself, like, you know, he's walking out of a store and somebody says, "Yo, thanks for all that you've been doing," and he kind of, you know, in soliloquy says, "Am I doing enough?" And I thought that was interesting too, because J. Cole absolutely, you know, even before the Ferguson protests, has been somebody that I look at as an artist that walks it like he talks it. And I know, and I'm not accusing Noname of this, but we saw it going into KOD. You know, J. Cole pays a price for that. You know, people find him sometimes to be preachy or, you know, whatever. And there was a whole movement, and we saw that in the conversation he had with Lil Pump of, you know, cloud artists, cloud rappers that enjoyed making fun of J. Cole and enjoyed trolling him. And then he used that moment with 1985 to respond to them and then take it one step further and have the conversation with Pump on the couch. And yeah, I mean, maybe this is just discourse. I mean, in her response, Noname, you know, kind of doubled down on her own point too, of that, you know, we have, you know, Black trans lives that matter, and there are women that have gone missing and are not getting coverage in the media. And where are the tweets? Where is the kind of leadership? So she feels the way that she feels. And certainly, you know, she's been an activist for years upon years too. And it was interesting. You know, these are two artists, to your point of like, we often look at ways of like subliminals. You know, you can go back to EPMD versus Eric B. and Rakim for that, you know, of like, oh, is he getting at so-and-so here? You know, these two artists have caught a photo together, like a friendly photo years ago. The Joe Budden podcast used it as their artwork this week on Saturday. So there clearly is respect, but there is a misunderstanding. And I find, you know, I've dealt with it in my circles of like, when it comes to activism and protest and wokeness, people often judge one another. Like, if you didn't put a photo up of you at a rally, were you really at the rally? Were you really donating? Were you doing this and doing that? And I think that that often comes from just overall frustration of, you know, the fact that, you know, Breonna Taylor's killers are still not been, you know, arrested. That's just one example. But these issues linger, and oftentimes the folks that are fighting the fight at some point can judge one another. And I'm not accusing Noname of that. I'm just saying that from a step back of it, you know, like, I understand that.
Yeah, it becomes a distraction, right? Because, you know, the substance of Cole's song, like, you know, is really, you know, like you said, he ended talking about like, you know, I can do more. Like I do need to get out. We all need to get out and do more. And, you know, instead of, you know, celebrating two artists who are really about it, now we've got a situation where they're being critical of one another, and it's all about beef and drama and further distraction from the actual problem, which is the systemic racism they're both trying to address. So I don't know, man. It feels it's very unfortunate. Like I wonder too, like why Cole catches that smoke so much. You know, you mentioned it. You know, that
with the pump stuff and
yeah, and an entire generation seems to kind of go at him. And do you think that he is more preachy or judgmental in his music than like a Kendrick or someone else? Like, why do you think people target Cole?
I don't understand that. I mean, early in his career, I found, and J. Cole has spoken about this himself. I mean, with that first album, A Sideline Story, he was trying to get in where he fit in. And, we really watched 7 years ago this week with Born Sinner, J. Cole begin a trajectory of stepping into his own. And you can look at that at a number of levels, from what he's saying to what he stands for, to not using features, to not, altering his production and not necessarily being so quick to work with everyone. Yeah, I mean, Cole is just an interesting artist that way, and not for nothing either. Like, I forget the name of the record. You probably know it off top, but a few years ago he made the song with the video between albums, and you and I disagreed of whether he was talking about
Middle
Kanye.
Show.
No.
The one with he used the waves beat.
Yeah,
he was on the bus. Yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, I give Cole credit because so often people are so sanitized and so polite with each other, quote unquote industry. And, J. Cole, in that case with Wale, who's his man,
Lost Prophets, right?
False Prophets.
False Prophets, yeah, okay.
He was able to kind of take him to the mat and be like, my man, like, you are who you are, like, accept your place, do better, but don't spend, like, and that's just a different kind of aesthetic than we see from artists. So I don't think we're going to hear or see much more from either Cole or Noname on this issue. It just becomes a talking point, and I did see this one fall across, lines of, I won't say like I saw J. Cole try to get canceled, but I saw him really in the crosshairs of a lot of frustration online this week, especially, Noname kept using that point about the patriarchy. You are using your time and your platform to respond to, a Black woman, a woman of color who's promoting all this thing instead of turning it to the people. But that's artistic license. And again, like, this is not the first time that J. Cole has used a Lucy to drive discourse that involves other artists.
Yeah, you mentioned that notion of people attacking each other for not doing enough, and I've seen a lot of that too. And I just think it's really unfortunate, man, because we're targeting each other. Those of us who are really aligned at trying to like make change, instead of like venting our frustration at the system that has caused the oppression. And I don't know. I do tend to think that it's calculated. I think that we're pitted against each other by design. I mean, we know that for a fact that Facebook was used that way in the last election. To sow that kind of like divisiveness when this is the perfect time for us to be unified. I just think it's unfortunate.
Well, I think the us there too. I mean, I'm not sure that I'm included on that, and I say that as a white guy. And we kind of disagreed on the term Black music in our last podcast. Not disagree. I think we were saying the same thing, but I treat it a little bit differently as a guest or as an outsider who feels I belong, to hip hop. And grew up with it and feel I'm part of the culture. But in this case, like, I see a lot of white businesses and white people that are, okay, where do you stand? Like, and that, I think that there's validity to that, of like, okay, like, you've been pandering to Black culture for all these years. You as a company, where do you stand? Apparel brand or, insurance company that uses hip hop lexic. Like, I'm curious about that. But when it comes to people that I know in their heart of hearts want to see systemic, racism and oppression end, you're absolutely right. They should not be pitted against one another. If anything, they are using their platforms in different ways. And, again, I'm a white guy, but I looked at J. Cole's song, Snow on the Bluffs, and I ask myself daily, am I doing enough? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah, so there was an outcry, not just from Noname, but lots of people. You and I even talked about it as to where were the artists, and on Juneteenth, Friday, there was just a slew of songs that came out. There was There was Cole. Reason dropped something. Very
Beyonce.
powerful song. Beyonce, Anderson .Paak, Public Enemy with DJ Premier.
Yes. Reason.
Reason his joint. There was a ton of stuff. So, one, what do you think about that? I'm very happy that people spoke up and put their voices to use. It feels a bit calculated though, to have it all come out on Juneteenth, like almost like it's like a marketing ploy rather than just releasing it when you felt it. You know what I mean? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. My feelings have been all over the board this week. I mean, on one hand, you had, the president of the United States that was originally going to host a campaign rally in a very specific place of Tulsa, Oklahoma, 100 or 99 years after Black Wall Street is bombed on Juneteenth. So at one hand, it's like, no, let's lift our voices, let's elevate our voices and drown out that crazy calculated move on their part. On another, yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting. Like, I have, a lot of my circle is Black. I don't wish anyone a happy Juneteenth. That feels very disingenuous to me. Like, I'm happy for the holiday, but to celebrate, slavery going on in this country for what, 2 more years?
3 more years, yeah.
3 more years after abolition.
It's not a happy day.
That's embarrassing.
Not a happy day, yeah.
But then I did see on social media, somebody made an interesting point. Here we are, Columbus Day, Christopher Columbus Day is still a federal holiday, and people are only now learning what Juneteenth is. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, like, let there be more awareness. But, getting back to the music, I think we've had a week or 2 or 3 from late May, and now we get to see musicians in all genres respond and make real-time songs. And I, you and I spoke about it last week, and one of the great records that I had heard that I didn't bring up in the podcast was also End of Days by Spillage Village, Earth Gang, JID. Mm. And that record is a phenomenal kind of page out of history, out of recent history. So they too belong in that conversation. And that one came out 2 weeks ago.
So which song of the ones that dropped, which ones hit you the most?
Anderson for sure. You actually hit me to that. Both. I knew that it was out, but I wasn't expecting that. Anderson's been releasing a lot of music over the last year and a half. And I love Anderson's truly one of my favorite artists since 2016 and even before that, but at the album stage. But man, and then the Jay Rock remix with that was whoa, like that.
Unreal. I mean,
unreal.
Okay, so someone told me that Anderson .Paak song had come out yesterday, and you know what a fan I am. I've seen the dude like 15 times. There was like an 18-month period where I saw the dude like 15 times. It was absurd how many times I saw him, and every time was great. So I'm a super fan. But the last couple of albums have been okay to me. I didn't feel them as much as I did like Malibu and Venice. But part of it's because I had set them at such a high standard. It's still good music, but that song was like, I thought, one of his best. And so I listened to it on Spotify and was blown away. I sent it to you as my song of the day yesterday, and then I started reading about the powerful video, and so I tuned into the video, and the video was incredible. First of all, and like the cameos and just like the expressions, and like Dave Meyers did his thing on that.
I didn't even realize it was Dave Meyers. That's dope.
It was Dave Meyers. Yeah, and then in the middle, all of a sudden, like Jay Rock has this verse, and like it's kind of a cappella, but not really, and he's kind of on beat, but kind of not. But like the jewels that he's dropping, and he's just like going in, he's dropping bombs, but just so calm and laid back, just kicking game to Sid, from the internet.
Classic Jay Rock. Yeah.
Man, you just forget how good that dude is, man. Like he's truly the OG at TDE, And then the way the video ended with Anderson just, holding his son and crying. Like I think all of us, a lot of us as parents, like, it's really hard these days to try and make sense of the world to your kids, and so like that hit me too, but just the whole thing was just incredible. Why do you
Yeah.
think that the J Rock verse wasn't included on the streaming services?
That's so bizarre to me too. Even when you mentioned Dave Myers, who works so closely with TDE, I mean, both Anderson's no longer in the Interscope system. I'm not sure that he ever was. I mean, he
Is
is
he not?
Aftermath.
Oh,
He's through Atlantic, which
oh,
I've
right.
never
Okay.
seen before.
Hmm.
Through this other group, was it 21? There's another thing with Aftermath. Anderson's one of those artists. It's like, Game, like Shady, G Unit, Aftermath. And but yeah, I mean, it's cool too. I mean, those guys won their Grammy together.
So he's not Aftermath anymore than either.
He is. He is.
But Aftermath has got to deal with Atlantic?
I feel like it's just with Anderson. I've never seen them do that in any other situation, where it's not Interscope, because those companies were so hand in hand.
Okay.
And I'm not even, I mean, I don't think that Anderson's ever put an album out through the Interscope umbrella, because both Venice and Oxnard were in the same field. I feel like I'm right on that. I could be mistaken on the first one, on what was it, Oxnard first. And but what I loved about the record too, I mean, Anderson's so hard to explain to people because he raps, he sings, he does his ad lib and his charisma, he plays the drums, he produces. Anderson really kind of, on that song, I had this awakening, and I'm like, wow, this is one of the closest things we've had to Q-Tip, because Q-Tip can go and make these singing records and these records that are so out of the hip hop genre. Like what he did with Janet Jackson, and then boom, come back and rap. And Anderson raps on this song to me, and I loved it because it was a lot closer to Malibu, which is truly one of my favorite albums of the last 5 years.
Yeah, this is the best I've heard him rap on a song.
Mm-hmm.
He was so in the pocket with it, and the singing too, everything about it. I just thought it was like a perfect song.
I hope we get
I saw
to your
some
point.
comments
Go ahead.
on YouTube. Someone said that TDE was holding their music back from streaming services.
Interesting. Well, the Reason joint is not on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that made me wonder, I wonder if that's why J Rock's verse wasn't included.
That's interesting too, and it makes you wonder because TDE threatened to do that before when Spotify tested their censorship role.
Yeah.
And TDE, who's never been in the crossfire of that, was just like, yo, this is the baby and the bathwater. We will do this our way. And that's interesting. And truly TDE and Dreamville and Aftermath, like these labels have enough power to do a move where they can go otherwise. But they are, the link that you sent me was official on YouTube, right? Of the video. It had to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where videos live.
Yeah.
Interesting. I really hope, I mean, the funny thing about it is I stand for all of those business decisions and ownership movements. I treat I'm a Spotify user, and one of the reasons I never switched to Tidal is because I have 7 years of documented playlists, and I kind of keep a yearbook of things. And for me, like I'm there forever because of that. And I really want this song with J Rock on it to be on the DSP, so I can kind of remember how I was feeling this weekend, 10 years from now.
Yeah, we got to get it on that playlist, man. I mean, that one is on there, but still just incredible.
That too.
It's been a really quiet year for TDE. There've been singles and everything, but there hasn't been an album this entire year from TDE, right?
I'm trying to think if the singers have put anything out. Sir, I don't think so. And Zakari maybe. I'm not, but you're right. I mean, especially on the rap side, no.
So you're thinking they're gearing up for like an onslaught in the second half? I don't see them letting the whole year go by without doing something big.
Probably not, especially after, I mean, AFH wasn't the only brand making the comparisons of like, wow, after 2019 is Dreamville kind of like maybe superior to TDE.
Right.
So no, I can't imagine that, but it also seems like a label of everything in its own time. And certainly, we got a really dope Ab-Soul verse recently. Everyone's like that's the longest he's gone without a project. It's been almost 5 years now, right? Or 4,
And 3 for Kendrick.
And I'm ready for Reason, because let's not forget, I mean, Reason's put out a lot of Lucy's this year, but the project that we got from Reason before was something that he had released online. It was just dressed up and re-released. So I'm ready for that true debut.
And Jay Rock is a year now, right? When came out? Yeah, man. The Beyonce song too. Just it's just a huge day for music. And so DJ Premier and Public Enemy. That is that the first time they've worked together. I can't recall any time.
Yeah, I can't either. I mean, I'm sure they performed together. There's some backstory there over the 10 Crack Commandments and the sample and some cool stuff there.
I know that.
But
yeah,
you definitely would.
Yeah.
I can't think that they've ever worked together before that I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah, big deal. It wasn't my favorite PE track. Chuck's verse, didn't really. I don't know. It didn't hit in the same way. But I was happy to see them working together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It was a to the Don Lemon point. Like I wonder what Chuck D has to say. And Chuck D has one of the most active Twitter accounts. But I'm just always curious, like, when things happen in this country, in this world, he is one of the people, you and I were talking about, like Killer Mike. I always want to know what Chuck has to say. And, that song was like straight up geared at this week, this month, this year. And that was cool. But I do agree with you. I mean, in theory, the idea of Chuck D and DJ Premier coming together, in my mind, it's something maybe I expected a little bit more than this, especially knowing that both of these artists, both of these legends have made great things recently. I mean, Prophets of Rage had some joints and Chuck's voice was like booming on those. His voice was a little different on this one. And Premier's made some incredible productions lately. He just did a joint with Singapore Kane, who's been a Gangstar affiliate out of Boston. It was one of my favorite Primo beats of recent memory, obviously Gangstar album last year. And this one was cool, and I respect it, but it's not my song of the week,
Yeah. So Father's Day, we started off talking about that. There are a lot of dudes in hip hop now who are fathers. It's not a young man's game anymore. It's a very multi-generational genre at this point. But there is not a lot of music that acknowledges fatherhood. Some of the notable ones are Nas's song, Daughters, and
Will Smith.
Will
with
Smith.
the Bill Withers.
Yeah, great. Jay and Kanye will sprinkle it in, periodically. They'll make references to Jay, especially to Blue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's not a focus a lot. Why do you think that is? Why do you think hip hop hasn't gone to a place where parenthood is a subject that's addressed thoroughly in music?
Man, that's a really good question. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's no good reason. I mean, do you have one?
Yeah, just in thinking about it, I think, hip hop is built on machismo so much, and, braggadocio and all that other stuff. And it doesn't necessarily line up because being a parent means, sacrificing and putting something before yourself and trying to teach them, break down the world for them and, be a leader and things like that. And, a lot of what rap music is doesn't put that forth. I guess the conscious music does, like going back to the Coles and the Kendricks and the Crits and people like that. But talking about like how much money you got, how nice your car is, stuff like that is not necessarily, something that people line up with parents, being a parent. It's kind of when you're on a date, having the baby seat in the car seat. It's not necessarily the best look, So
one of the things I'm thinking about too is that a sacred place? Like, so many artists have made great songs about their fathers, for better and worse. Papa was a player. Jay-Z. Pops left me. On and on. And Royce, I mean, look at the 2 records that he's made on his last 2 albums about his dad, between Cocaine and the closer on The Allegory. But maybe people aren't so quick to talk about their children. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it's just, and people are being more and more vulnerable and more personal, but maybe it's not like, yo, I don't want my daughter to grow up in the public eye, or my son. That could be one reason. So with that said, I mean, one of the interesting projects that came out that wasn't protest music or Juneteenth music this week was Skyzoo, who's been, you know, you and I, it feels like less than a month ago, we're just talking about his last EP, which was very much themed around jazz. He comes out with an album called Milestones. You know, album, EP, call it what you will. And it's really interesting because it talks about his father, and it also looks at Sky as a father. And it uses as inspiration, both on its artwork and its interludes, Boys in the Hood, you know, and the relationship of, you know, Furious Styles and Trey Styles. And it's a really rich project. And, you know, Sky is an artist that, you know, 15 years ago people were buzzing about, but we've talked about this with a few other MCs. I'm convinced that right now he's in the stride of his career, and I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah, that's interesting that he uses Boys in the Hood. Like, that was a very powerful image of a father for me. I have a really good friend that, you know, is more like a brother, who named his son Trey. You know, I recently watched that with my son, and afterwards he said, yo, you know, Furious kind of reminds me of you, which, like, I took to just be like one of the most amazing compliments, because I aspire to be that kind of balance with the father. You know, Furious to me was like a person he was a strong dude, and very much a father, you know, but he could also still have, like, you know, friendly conversations and be like, kid around with his son too, you know, like that. There's this one scene where they're in the kitchen, and Trey comes in and he's like, yo, you know, Pops, can you give me a haircut? And he just goes, I'm eating. Like, you know, like, boy, respect me. You see me eating here. Just, you know, calm down. Like, I got you, but calm down. But then, you know, a second later, he's in the chair and, like, you know, he's sniffing on. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, yo,
Yeah.
you got any trim yet? You know, like, and he's like, and he laughs and says he has, and they have a, you know, father-son conversation about, you know, relationships, and just that kind of balance was like pretty amazing, you know. So
yeah, that I mean, just growing up watching that movie probably 25 to 50 times in my life. It's my favorite character in the whole movie is Lawrence Fishburne, Furious Styles. And, you know, that, and I grew up with a father that wasn't in the house, but that had a important presence in my life that way. And yeah, I mean, that character, I always think of that scene of, you know, them standing on the vacant lot and him educating the entire community.
Yeah.
That, and, you know, obviously the fishing scene where he talks about Vietnam, just powerful stuff.
Yeah. Great movie. Rest in peace of John Singleton.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there was some great interviews about where that character really stemmed from, and it has very real lineage to John's own life, you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know
which is probably why it's so resonant, you know.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Morpheus. Yeah, man. So big week. The Beyonce song. Any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of deep thoughts. I played it a couple times. I actually didn't know that it happened. This was one of the quieter release weeks for me. Of like, Friday wasn't about consuming music. I just had, like you last week, a bunch of other things going on. But really great record, and something that I hope. I mean, Beyonce's reach is so strong. So as we talk about educating people that might not have grown up with any idea what it feels like to be Black, or what it feels like to be living in these times that closely, I hope this record does some of that work. You know, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it adds to a really strong body of work that she's had. You know, I think it started with the Super Bowl. You know, that Super Bowl halftime performance was just unreal in its power, and like its aggressiveness and militancy. You know, and then she followed it up with the Coachella performance. I'm so like sad that I missed it, but you know, the Homecoming documentary on Netflix was just incredible. Like, just I had chills watching that, and that also was a real embracing of Black heritage, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she's had it in other videos too. The video "We Like to Party," you know, and you know, even with Lemonade, she had a lot of imagery, very powerful imagery, and strong Black imagery in it too. So I think, you know, Beyonce, you know, it's really amazing to see how her career has evolved. You know, she started in a girl group, and you know, very light, you know, can you pay my bills, like, you know, type music.
The war with Sporty Pigeons or Sporty Thieves, like
Yeah,
caught
yeah,
up in
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
Take it, boom.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, they were going against TLC, but then
Right.
then, you know, she evolved into like, you know, just singing about, you know, women's problems, and like, you know, being that rep for women, like, and like empower, like, you know, girls around the world, like, you know, very strong feminist voice. Then she evolved into, you know, relationship and, you know, motherhood, and now she's taken on like an activist thing. So her career, she's just had so many different branches of it. You know, it's pretty amazing to watch.
She's not eligible, as far as I understand, in terms of age. But you know, you and I have said about Killer Mike and other people, Beyonce could be president in our lifetime. You know, if she wanted to be. And yeah, I mean, I really do. That was a tipping point with the NFL, and it's so interesting because if I'm not mistaken, that was before, you know, Colin ever started taking a knee. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think so. And now here we are, in the NFL is coming full circle, and both Roger Goodell and even, you know, Trump have gone back in my estimation, in my perception of Colin Kaepernick, you know. And Beyonce is one of the drivers of change there, because I remember how many people were upset about the lyrics and the fist and even the choreography of that show.
Yeah, so the NFL has taken, well, Roger Goodell specifically, right, has taken some very different stances regarding you know, what's going on in the world than they did 4 years ago. You know, Goodell came out and said we made a mistake with how we dealt with the protests, and now he's saying that Kaepernick should get signed to a team. Like, how much of that do you think is related to Jay-Z? Do you think he's behind the scenes orchestrating some of this, or do you just think it's a result of what's the shift in the world over the last few weeks?
I think on this particular issue, it's the latter. I just think the NFL, and you know, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I love football on Sunday. I think the NFL is just showing how archaic their political stance has been, and you know, they're years late on this. And I think Jay, when he orchestrates something, it's much smarter than this. And Goodell making that statement this month or this week, and even Trump's tweets about Colin Kaepernick, they all just look like, you know, like when somebody's wrong in an argument years later, like, oh yeah, I didn't mean that. And there has been serious implications of this chasm over the last 5 years, you know. So I think it's interesting. Beyonce is at the forefront. I mean, Jay has played a huge role in it. You know, I mean, sure, there was the stuff in 2019, but even ahead of driving the discourse, wearing Colin's jersey on SNL, using lyrics, all of that. I mean, they have been drivers of change. But this stuff right now, no, I don't think that's Jay, because I just don't think the NFL looks. I don't think they come up smelling like a rose on this one.
Nah, they look slow and reactionary, and like they're catering more so than like actually sincere. Yeah. You know, I watched did you by any chance listen to the Rush Limbaugh interview on the Breakfast Club?
No, tell me about it.
Yeah, so I listened to that today. I've been meaning to get to it. It happened maybe a week or so ago, and I just wanted to see how Charlemagne handled him. You know, because you know, Rush is a wily veteran and you know, a leader of the bully pulpit for decades now. And it was interesting. You know, first of all, it was interesting to me the way that they set it up, because they had Envy read a statement. Like, he read a statement basically almost like it was almost like apologizing, or you know, but not apologizing, but justifying why they would speak to Rush Limbaugh. You know, and then afterwards they did the same thing, and it was all about, you know, we, as a platform need to, if we're going to move forward, we need to like have discussions with people with opposing viewpoints, and this is the way to do that and stuff like that. And it was interesting to me that we've gotten to a point where we have to justify having conversations with people who have different points.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the whole like Cole Noname Twitter thing, right? Where, we've moved so far away from conversation, like just even allowing for diverse viewpoints and allowing for people to talk to someone who thinks differently is like, that's a bad thing. Like that's a terrible place to be,
I agree with you.
I grew up, I went to, private school, predominantly white, lived in a Black neighborhood. I had to be able to have conversations with, all people. And I believe it's helped me to relate to people in general. I'm sure that a lot of people that I grew up with are Trump supporters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that they care deeply about me. And I believe we have a lot more in common than we do differences, but we've been forced to be polarized. But if we would sit down and actually have conversations, I believe we could reach common ground, and move ahead. But now we put ourselves in a place where we can't have conversations, and it's just like we're fractured. So
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that if on Father's Day, if I ever have children, I will tell them, like Killer Mike didn't come up with it, but he's always been an advocate of, get to know people that are different than you. If you're a man, have women friends that are not in the context of a romantic relationship, different faith groups, different classes, different levels of ability, so on and so forth. And that is one of the most valuable things. And for me, to me, that is some of the best conversation that there is, from two people that don't see the world in a public setting. And let's not, Charlemagne in particular has been part of some of the most interesting political reporting of right now. I mean, to me, the Joe Biden comment, if you vote for Trump, you ain't black, which is from one white guy to another, cringeworthy, beyond belief. That is the 2020 answer to Bill Clinton going on Arsenio with the saxophone and the shades on. Like, that is, so it absolutely, that conversation should live here. So apart from all that, I mean, I'm curious, was there any highlight of Rush talking to the Breakfast Club?
He did at least acknowledge that there was zero justification for the behavior of Derek Chauvin. He said that he thought he should be charged with first-degree murder, and that his fellow police officers should also be charged. He said no excuses, no, just categorically that was an act of evil. So that was cool. But then he basically said that the notion of white privilege was a construct by the Democratic Party, and
wow.
he also kind of denied the notion of any kind of white supremacist system. It devolved into just kind of like a political like dance, and it wasn't really, in my mind, a genuine conversation. But I was glad that they did it, at least, just.
And unlike Joe Biden, I mean, Rush has nothing to gain. I mean, he's not out here pushing a book or anything, is he?
He mentioned their power as a morning show a couple times.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that like maybe he's lost a little bit of his luster and is trying to like hitch.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
A little bit.
I wouldn't know. I mean, I know of his health issues, but I mean, we're also living in an era of swaps. Joe Budden goes on Joe Rogan, if I'm not mistaken. You have Mike Tyson like guesting on other shows, and we're living in that time of like, let's share audiences, which we never got. I don't think Starr and Buck Wild were ever guests on the Stern show, and I don't think Stern was ever, a guest on. So it's different times, and we're just like building audiences and trying to get all that up. So, I don't know if there's a lot of Rush Limbaugh fans that'll be tuned in to NVE and Charlemagne the God.
Yeah, Probably so. Well, you got anything else, man?
Not this week. It was really good just to see music kind of leading the way. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, well, I didn't tune in. I'll give that. But did you tune in for Alicia Keys versus John Legend?
You know, dude, I completely forgot about it. Like, I literally completely forgot.
Yeah.
Friday night, I was like, oh, you know, and you know, I did watch a little bit of the YouTube, but I saw like John Legend two-step, and I was like, nah, I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
And but you know, we speculated that it could get to 1 million, right? You know, we talked about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I jumped on that hill and I was like, it could go over 1 million. Did it?
Dog, when I looked at it like in the middle, and it was 147,000. I mean, it was.
Yeah, that's
That's
funny.
foul, man.
Yeah.
You take pride in that as an R&B
No,
hater, don't you?
no, man. You got me all wrong. I'm gonna play Keith Sweat all afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was really shocked, but you know, it was a Friday. Things are opening back up
Yeah.
again. You know, it's been a crazy few weeks in the world. There's a lot. So, but I was surprised. I was surprised. I'm wondering, like, if it'll still have legs, you know, as the world opens back up, or it's a unique situation.
I think they need to move it into the week personally. I mean, that's with the reasons you said. And, you know, I live in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and Juneteenth celebrations were not only going on well into the night Friday of fireworks, of people, you know, congregating and, you know, just hanging out, enjoying outside and, you know, being proud. They continued all weekend long. So I don't know that people were ready to like go inside and, you know, turn on YouTube and do this, or Instagram, you know. So,
Yeah.
I didn't tune in. I didn't even see anyone state who they thought won. I did see on the AFH, you know, Twitter timeline, folks were just kind of vibing out, remembering good records that both artists had made throughout their catalog.
Yeah. What was that?
I have no clue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If that was anything, my dog just learned how to talk, and
yeah,
I need to find a way to monetize
I gotta
that.
make sure, exactly. Well, he'll be our next guest, right?
Yeah.
Like Theo.
Yeah, then he'll go on Breakfast Club and get that money.
Right.
So what's your song of the week, man, before I let you go?
Yo, hands down, man, it's Lockdown, Anderson .Paak song. That song just, I listened to it probably 10 times yesterday. Incredible. Just love that song.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I'm gonna, it wasn't my song of the day yesterday, but I kept playing it. I'm gonna agree with you. We've never had the same one that I think, but that's it with the Jay Rock verse. You know, Anderson's made some really cool music since Malibu and the first No Worries album. But I think this is the best thing I've heard from him since 2016.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, man. Well, always a pleasure. And,
likewise, man. Happy Father's Day. I hope you get to spend it with the family.
Thank you, man. I'm looking forward to it. And I know we got some cool guests coming up. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
Look out for that.
Yeah.
All right,
no
man.
doubt.
Peace.
All right, man. Bye.